I've got one flame to burn, one race that I can say I ran.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 21047.com podcast. My name is Keith Cartwright. I am the host of this show, and I'm really glad to have you along listening in today, wherever it is that you're listening, and whenever it is that you might be listening in. Today's episode is sponsored by my buddy Doug Bone. Doug sponsors me through the Patreon platform, and if you want to learn a little more about Patreon, you can go to my website, 21047.com, TWOTIM47.com, and then just click on the Support Me tab, and it will tell you a little bit more about Patreon. Patreon is really just a place where folks can go and lend financial support, financial backing to projects like this 21047.com website, where I share stories through podcasting and writing and just trying to use this incredible running journey I've been on to bring some light to folks who might need it, and doing that in as many ways possible. And certainly the financial backing helps that, as well as folks who are out there listening and just engaging in this in one way or another. So I certainly appreciate all the support out there, but especially those folks who support me through the Patreon platform. So thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. And a really good episode today for you to sponsor. Going to be talking to my friend Jodi Stoner. Jodi, this past Monday, ran the Boston Marathon. And if you've been listening to this show, maybe you remember my interview with Jodi back in the fall at some point, October, I believe. And we talked a lot about her running journey and mainly a lot about her partnership with her little buddy, River. And so River has Spina Bifada, and Jodi started on this running journey, really kind of a happy but sad beginning to her running journey. A friend of hers, Monica, had wanted to run a half marathon to celebrate her birthday and reached out to Jodi and said, "Hey, will you run this with me?" Jodi wasn't a runner, so she was a bit hesitant about accepting that invitation, but long story short, she did. She went and ran that half marathon with Monica. And then sadly, shortly after that, Monica passed away of breast cancer and never ran again. And then Jodi went on this incredible running journey. And at some point, she was just looking for a little more meaning in that running journey, and that's when she found her little buddy River, and life just took on a whole new direction, as well as her running journey. And last year, when I interviewed her, she had qualified for Boston, so she was really looking forward to getting to Boston here this past week to run for River, which she does every place she runs. And so if you followed Boston this past Monday, what a surprise that Jodi got. Everybody was, training and leading up to this big race for a lot of people. It's a dream come true. You really want to go there and do well. And then to run into the elements that they had there Monday, rain, freezing rain, high winds, just a monsoon most of the time. Most of the elite runners that you talked to described it as just one of the most challenging races that they'd ever been a part of. So for Jodi, well, you'll hear a lot about it in this conversation, where the expectations changed a bit, and just the magnitude of what she got herself into was a little bit different than what she had trained for. But it was sure fun to watch. It's amazing to me as I watch this Boston Marathon and find myself really fascinated with it, intrigued by it, and can even dream at some point of running that race, which again, 4 years ago, whatever it was, I was not even a runner, probably didn't know exactly what the Boston Marathon was, much beyond that this is a race where people go out and run. And at that point, that was ridiculous to me. Anybody would purposefully go out and run that far. And so then to sit there at work Monday, kind of checking in on Jodi and some of my other friends with some real excitement, watching the electronic maps update their location and kind of feeling the goosebumps as if I was right there. That is just hard to grasp. But I've come to really appreciate the Boston Marathon and everything it stands for. kind of the pinnacle of marathon runners in this country anyhow. Well, everywhere. There's just a lot of foreigners that come. In fact, it was an American woman this time who won it for the first time in, I don't know what, 30-some years. So there was a lot of celebration around that. And to be able then to follow up last week with a dear friend, Jodi Stoner, to dig into the pictures you see on TV, the weather. What was it like for, a runner just like me? Well, not just like me, because she's a whole lot faster than me, but just doesn't do this for a living, really. Just gets out there to challenge herself, see what she can do, running for some pretty important causes like our buddy River. It was just fun to talk with her and dig into that and just get into her mindset. What was it like standing there at the beginning of that race and those elements, knowing 26.2 miles ahead of it? The weather forecasts weren't calling for anything better. It was clearly going to be an ugly day. So we had a great conversation. I love Jodi Stoner, her enthusiasm for life in general, her faith in God, her just get out there and take a step and do it and see what kind of story gets written in this attitude that she has. She's my kind of people. And so we had a great conversation. I will turn this over to that conversation. And here is Jodi Stoner. All right. Well, I want to welcome Jodi Stoner back to the 21047.com podcast. So welcome, Jodi.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, well, like I was just telling you, I was on my way home from work today and thinking about this conversation. I've really been looking forward to it since last week or whenever it was that you agreed to do it, knowing you were headed to Boston. And so that's where you were Monday. You ran the Boston Marathon. And I was listening to our podcast from the last time today, and you had talked about you had qualified for Boston. You never really dreamt that could happen, but it did. And then, one of the things you said, we had talked on the last podcast about your New York City run and how you didn't think anything could ever top that, but you had a funny feeling that Boston would. So I'm really anxious to get into this Boston story and see just where it rates. So let's just start right there. Boston, what were you feeling leading up to the Boston Marathon? As it really got real, you got to Boston, what was going on?
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that Boston is a point-to-point marathon, and that means that it starts in one place and it ends in another. So it's not a circle and it's not an out and back. So unlike other races that are a circle or out and back, the weather, the wind is very, very important. And watching the weather is really important because let's say you had, a headwind, for example. You may have it the whole entire way. Running in a circle, like a big loop race, you're going to get a little bit of everything, But a point-to-point race can be awesome, and it can be horrible, very challenging, I should say. So as the days were going on, we were getting closer and closer to the race. I guess in the 10 days leading up to the race, I was watching the weather carefully, and the closer it got, the worse it got. The wind was changing, and they were predicting rain and then freezing rain, and then 100% chance of freezing rain, and a direct headwind of 20 to 30 miles with 50-mile-an-hour gusts. And I just thought, I didn't train for that. Like, I didn't, I trained to thrive. I was going to Boston to have a personal best, and 72 hours before the race, now I was just trying to figure out how I was going to survive it. How am I going to run in 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts and freezing rain? So I went, you always have to go back to your core and to your heart, and I have faith, and I knew that it would be okay. I didn't know how, but I knew that it was going to be okay.
I'm curious, knowing all that, watching all of that, what were some very real things you did to get ready for that. I mean, obviously, all of a sudden you trained, you've run many marathons, so you were familiar with how you get ready for a marathon, but now with all these new elements in there, what did you do to kind of change course?
Well, I tried to watch the other runners. I brought rain gear, so I knew I could just layer it up, and I just thought, if I'm too overdressed, these layers, I'll just take one off at a time. I wanted to keep my head dry, so we bought a little hat while I was here and then covered that up. I knew I wanted to keep my shoes dry, so plastic bags. Some people had duct tape over their shoes to try to keep them dry. Some people at the start line had throwaway shoes, because once you get to the start line, you're going to wait about an hour, and we waited in the rain. So we started, you start wet. So everyone had like throwaway clothes, and they handed out garbage bags. So you put a hole in the top of the garbage bag and stuck your head through, and then just tried to squat down and keep yourself as dry as you could for as long as you could. And those are things that I'm just not used to doing at home, and I didn't know what's it going to be like for my feet to be wet for 26 miles. And, just those kinds of things. Like I kept thinking, all right, I'm just going to have to go with it. I'm just going to have to try to stay as dry as I can for now and just do the best I can. But that was difficult, because it just wasn't, I just kept looking around and trying to copy what all the other people do.
What exactly were the conditions like as you're standing at the starting line? I'm thinking, I remember when I ran the half marathon at Virginia Beach last year, and I said the worst part of that wasn't the weather, which was awful, but it was standing around in that weather doing nothing for an hour before it became my time to run. And there's just a lot of mental games that start going on.
The first mental game is, we stayed in Boston. Like most people stay in Boston. So on race morning, you hop on a bus, and they drive you 26 miles away, which in itself messes with your head a little bit, because you just keep driving and driving and driving, and you think, I have to run all the way back. So that kind of messes with you a little bit. Plus, Gene could not go, my husband could not go to the start line with me, so I was alone. I had some runner friends, some people that I knew on the bus, and so that was good, but Gene is usually with me when I train. So having to leave him because it was raining so hard, I didn't take my phone. I didn't want it to get wet. So I left my phone. So there was really no link to him at all. So that was in itself a little unsettling. I got off the bus, and I knew I had about an hour wait. And I remembered my friend Jen said she was going to be there, and she was in my corral. But we're talking about 35,000 people. As soon as I thought that, I heard her yell my name, and I turned, and there she was, and we linked arms, and we stayed together until they actually had us run. So I actually was just huddled up with her for about an hour. We kept collecting throwaway clothes that people were throwing on the sides of the street and covering our feet, just to try to keep our feet dry, and that worked. That worked pretty well. God has a way of just hopping in there. I was feeling a little lost. And as soon as I thought about her, she called my name. She saw River's name on the side of my leg. I wrote River in a Sharpie marker on my leg in big, bold letters, and she saw it and called out to me.
Oh, so that's wonderful. Now, what was the most challenging weather element as you're standing there? Wind, rain, cold, just all of it? And how uncomfortable were you by the time the race started?
Well, I was shivering cold, and I knew I've been at enough start lines that I'm going to warm up. Once I start running, I'm probably going to warm up. There were these gusts, and I hadn't looked at the weather radar that morning, but someone on the bus was flashing it around their phone, and it said that around noon, this big band of red was coming through. So I knew I would be at about the halfway mark at that point. The Boston Marathon I didn't start running until 10:50. Most of the time our races, you have to get up at 3 a.m. and eat, and you're off and running at 6:30 in the morning. But I was up really early. You catch the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you just wait, Boston. So that in itself was a little unnerving. We stood there and held on to each other, and we cried a little, and we talked a little, and we tried to keep our feet dry, and I just felt like it was just really nice to be there for her and for her to be there for me. So we didn't run together. We said goodbye, and when we took off, we wished each other well and hug and a kiss, and off we went. But it was a beautiful start.
So I'm wondering again, even when we talked last fall, you had this picture in your mind of this race. You were really excited about it, and I'm wondering, here you are, you're getting ready to start, you're cold, you're wet. What has happened to your sort of picture of what's about to happen? Has it changed? Are you as excited, or now is it just oh my goodness, I just want to get this done?
Well, part of me was like, I want to get this done. Part of me was like, this isn't what I came here for. Like my first initial was like, this isn't what we came here for. But looking back, it's only been 2 days. It was epic. It was really, it just couldn't have been any better. It really couldn't have. And it was that way for a reason. And I have an experience that I'll never, my first Boston, every step was an experience. And the weather played a big part of that. It was very challenging. The more I see on TV of the elite runners saying it was the hardest race I ever ran, I'm just like, I was a part of that, and so that's what made it really good now that it's over. Going through it, I was, I was worried that I've never ran in that kind of wind, and standing at the start line, we've decided, like, if it's going to rain, we don't want it to sprinkle. We want it to be epic. Let it be, bring it on, let it just be the best, the hardest, let's go, we can do this. So we're just trying to pump each other up. And, I thought that the spectators, I figured, well, the weather's really, really bad. They're just not going to be out there. But I was wrong. They were out there, and they didn't just cheer. They leaned as far as they could over the railing, and they pointed at you, and they yelled, like, to you. Like, they said, you're my hero. Like, I love you. You're going to do this. They spoke to you. I've never had that, at any rate. That was super personal. Like, New York was really loud, and it was awesome. And this is just, Boston takes it personal, this race, and the entire town just celebrates, and you can see it, like you can feel it. So that was really cool, and I think that made a huge difference.
Yeah, I imagine more than any other race, just given the elements you had to battle, any source of strength or encouragement you could grab onto, that had to really help. So once you started going, you huddled, you ran, as you got into the race, did that help? Did you immediately, once you were running, kind of get into a running mode and I can do this thing, this is going to be okay? Or how did that go once you started running?
Well, I kept thinking about that radar, and I knew that it was coming, and I wanted to have a good race. I wanted to pace myself, and the first 10 miles of Boston are mostly downhill. So a lot of runners passed me because I was just determined to have a good race. My overall pace for the whole race was pretty even. On paper, I had a really good, even race. I didn't kill it the first 10 miles and then walk the last half of it. I had a pretty even race the whole way, and so I was really happy with that. I read a lot about the race before, and I studied the map, and I broke it up into pieces, the first 10 miles, and then at the halfway point, there's Wellesley College. It's an all-girls liberal arts college, and the girls come out and they cheer, and over the years, they've been given the name the Scream Tunnel because you can hear them from a mile away as you're approaching. So I thought, gosh, I wonder if they're going to be out there. I wonder if the girls. And about a half a mile from Wellesley College, you could hear them. You could hear them over the rain, over the wind. You could hear them yelling. And when you got there, you would have they made you feel like you were the best thing in the world. And even with the weather, you know, I wondered if they'd be out there, but they did not disappoint. They were soaking wet, and they were yelling, "You got this, you're my hero." And I pretty much cried the entire mile through that college area. It really pulled me in. What was funny is I looked down at my watch to make sure I was keeping pace, and once I got past them, I was running way too fast. Like, they got me so, you know, pumped up. I'm like, "Oh, slow down, slow down, slow down." You know, so after that was the halfway. I knew that the challenge, the hills were ahead. There are the Newton Hills, and then the Mac Daddy of all, mile 20, is Heartbreak Hill. And I knew if I got to the top of Heartbreak Hill, I was going to be okay. So that was my next challenge. And you know, Keith, that in the cartoons, that little angel on your shoulder, on one shoulder, and the little devil on the other.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay, so most of the time that devil voice doesn't even speak to me. I don't even know it's there. But when you're running, that little voice of self-doubt tries to creep in, and it tries to let you know it's there, and it tries to drag you down, and it tries to remind you that you can quit anytime you want. And the challenge, I think, for runners, once you're trained, I mean, physically, you know you can do something. The challenge is just not allowed to let that voice or that feeling win. And that's when I think about River. And he sent me a video saying, "I hope you win, and I love you." And, you know, his little 6-year-old voice saying that just went over and over in my head. "I hope you win, and I love you." And that little devil voice didn't really stand a chance, you know, against my buddy and how inspiring he is and how badly I want to make him proud. You know, maybe he doesn't understand it. Yeah,
and I will talk about it in the intro, but for those who listened last time or didn't listen last time, Jodi just pours her heart and her running life and her life outside of running into this little boy, River, who has Spina Bifida, and they've connected, you know, through a I Run For organization, and you've just, I mean, this has become your reason for running, River, and this Boston Marathon, I mean, it's special for all runners. I mean, anybody who gets to Boston, it's kind of the pinnacle, really, of just running. But for you and River to get there, I did wonder how often you thought about him throughout the race and kind of what it meant to him. It's very cool that he sent you the video.
Yeah, he sent me the video, and they've sent me little pictures, and River's mom and dad have been following the journey, and they've been talking to River and his brother about what the Boston Marathon is and how special it is, and they've made a really big deal out of it for me, and it's just, they've made it, I mean, it's special, and then they've gone above and beyond for me, for taking the pictures, and he writes messages and colors pictures, and he asked his mom, "Is today the Boston Marathon?" You know, that he knows that, and he knows it's important to me. And I don't know if he understands now, right now, but one day I'm hoping he will. And I just, you know, I just want to make him proud that, you know, that I did this for him, and for him and for us, and for all the people, for the awareness that we try to raise. And for our group called I Run For Michael, which matches runners with buddies, and then you dedicate your mile to your buddy, and that's how I was matched with River. So we went there representing everybody, and that's what I just wanted for him.
I know you made him proud. It was such an incredible story to follow. So I have to wonder, you know, coming off of that, the finish line, what kind of emotions went through your, I mean, because, I mean, I thought about this after you finished. I'm like, oh my goodness, the weather, Boston Marathon, River. I mean, I get emotional at every finish line, even if there's nothing else sort of attached to it. You just had everything attached. I can't imagine your emotions crossing that finish line.
You know, and it just all came just crashing down on me, like in a good way. I got to about the 24 or 25 mile mark, and I was just feeling like At the 21-mile mark, I was going to just take an even pace till I got to the 21-mile mark, and then my plan was to just take anything I had left and just give it all I've got from 21 on. But my legs were so cold that I felt like if I ran any faster, like I felt like I was going to cramp up, and I've never felt like that before. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to cramp up and not even be able to walk. So I just kept a steady pace. But when my legs felt cramping, I'm worrying a little bit. And there was a woman on the side of the street, and she looked at me and she pointed at me and she said, "Today you're going to run the Boston Marathon." And I thought, well, that pretty much, right there, that just says it all. Today I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. Like, it sunk into my head what was happening. And those are the kinds of things that really push you, There was another time that I was just feeling a little like really like I was wearing an 80-pound backpack, and the song came on my iPod. I got an old church choir in my soul, and River sent me that song, him singing it, just singing it a cappella, and that song came on, and I just thought, oh, this is, if you've, like, God, please just help me, just a little nudge on the back, and then, that comes on. What a pull. What a huge pull. So I don't need the theme from Rocky or Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah. River and the old
right.
church choir.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. So he sent me that video, and then that song came on my iPod, and I thought, I can do anything. And the last couple of turns, I'd memorized the map, so I knew that the last turn on the Boston Marathon course is like a left hand on Boylston Street. And I never knew the name until I started looking at the map and looking at all the things that surrounds Boston. Boylston is just a very important part of the race. So once you make that turn, that left-hand turn, you can see the finish line. It's huge. And I saw that street sign, and I made that turn, and I just, I knew 100% that this is going to happen now. And that's when, I cried all the way down Boylston Street, and I crossed the finish line with my hands up in the air. And because of security and because of what happened in Boston 5 years ago, no one is allowed to be at the finish line for you. So you end up crying and holding on to people that you don't know, people that just finished with you, the people that hand you your medal. They put it around your neck. They insist on putting it around your neck instead of just handing it to you, which means so much to runners. And they hug you, and they tell you how proud they are of you, even though they don't know you. And it's just one of the most special things. It's special at any race, and you know that because you train and then you do it and you watch your dream come true. And that's what happened to me,
Well, I got to tell you, I was following you all day just online on the little digital map, and, I found myself getting emotional just as it's amazing to me that I didn't, 4 years ago I didn't run, and now I'm following you on the internet like a little blue dot moving across the digital map, literally getting tears in my eyes just because I know so much of this story. I could feel so much of what it meant to you. And so it was a fun journey for me, a fun day. And then when you sent the picture of you in the medal, that I kind of had my own moments. But I'm just really proud of you. It was such a cool story.
Thank you. When you cross the finish line, again, no one can really be there for you. So you continue walking, and they wrap you up in a foil blanket to try to keep you dry, because as soon as you stop running is when you get cold. And then you have to go to a place, you're kind of walked to a place called Family Reunion. My last name starts with an S, so I went to the big sign that said S, and there was my husband standing under the S, ready, waiting for me. He saw on the internet too, when I'd finished, because he was tracking me. And, so he was there, and that was really another finish line for me, because he's just been there for me every step of the way training. He's ridden a bike behind me for every mile that I've trained, and he asks me, what were your splits today, and how'd you feel? That was a good run. He can tell the pace I'm running, so it was, it was for him too. It was just a huge something we kind of did together. And knowing when you're out there running that people are tracking you, when you cross those mats in the street, and the people beforehand who sent me messages saying, I'm going to track you, you feel like they're with you, Yeah, and so that's a pretty neat thing, because as I crossed those mats, I thought about the people who'd messaged me. I thought about my husband, because I knew he knew, and I was at the 5K mark, and I needed to be at 27 minutes. That's where I wanted to be. And I looked at the clock, and I had 27 minutes on the clock, and I kind of grinned because I knew he would be happy. She's right where she needs to be. So you don't feel alone out there, because running can be really lonely.
No, I absolutely. Now, you finished in 4 hours and 14 seconds, if I have that right. And so what was the personal best you were shooting for?
Well, I was shooting for a 3:49. I ran a 3:50 in Myrtle Beach. I wanted a PR. I wanted a personal best at Boston, and that's what I trained for. And that's what I want. That's what I was coming to get. It was just, I was going to give it all I've got. And when the weather came up and people were saying, well, you know what, I'm just going to use it as a training run, and then I'm going to run another marathon in a couple weeks, or 3 weeks or a month, and just go out and hammer that. And I thought about it, and I said to Jean, it probably won't be my best time because there's a headwind the whole way. But I do want to go out there, and I want to give it everything I have. And I left nothing out there. I had nothing in reserve. I was done. And I'm happy I did that. I feel good about.
That was one impressive time. I'm going to tell you,
thank you.
Your halftime was well under 2 hours, and I was just shaking my head because you were seeing on TV pictures of the weather. And so purely from an athletic standpoint, put aside all the emotions I know you were dealing with, from an athletic standpoint, that was incredibly impressive to me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I trained really hard, and I the hardest I've ever trained. I was really on a mission and really dedicated to this. I wanted a good time, and I wanted that medal for River, and I just had my eye on the prize. And I just said to my husband, I'm not going to use it as a training run. I really want to go out there, and I want to run a good, solid race. And I want to give it all I've got. And he said, then let's do it. So that's what I did, and I really feel good about that decision. I had a good Boston. I mean, I really did. With all of that.
I am such a big fan of stories. When you're in it, you really don't know that this is, where this story's going to be. But then as you kind of get further away from it, you can look back and, hopefully you're starting to see what a really cool element that weather really was to your story. Someday when you talk about the Boston Marathon, you were really in a memorable one. You created just an awesome story Monday.
I really feel that way, and I'm really glad that we let 2 days go by before I talked to you, because if I had just talked to you, you just crossed the finish line, talk to me about it, I don't know that I would have had that, because there's just so much going on. And when you run, the stuff that goes through your head and the mental challenges and the things that you use to get you to certain points, and the appreciation for the people that went out there. I mean, I just couldn't believe the people that were out there running and the people that were out there cheering. The louder the rain got and the little gusts that came through that were crazy, the louder the crowd got, the louder the runners got. And you just feel blessed. You just feel like, I can't believe I get to be out here. And that's how I felt, the whole way. I landed in Boston thinking this is a curse, and it turned out, as it always does, to be just a huge, huge blessing. And just a great time I had, and what a great story I have. So I'm very, very happy.
I wondered if you thought back, because I did. I mean, because I just, as the further I get into, my running journey, life journey, I'm always just looking back and seeing where God was. And your story just includes this unbelievable beginning of your friend Monica, talking you into this half marathon so many years ago. You weren't a runner, and she talks you into this, and unfortunately then she, passed away of breast cancer, never ran again. But I don't know if and then there you are at Boston, someplace I'm sure when you ran that first half marathon you never ever dreamed of. Did you look back as you're at Boston or crossing that finish line, look back at that just crazy, unlikely beginning and just shake your head a little bit at how did I get here?
Absolutely. I do that a lot. I do it all the time because I wasn't really athletic. I mean, I wasn't just really athletic. I mean, I didn't start running till I was in my late 30s, and it was just kind of as a favor to Monica for her birthday. She just didn't want to run alone. And I think about her all the time and the gift that she's given me. And through, just a simple act of putting on some running shoes and going for a run, how it's changed my life, how it's brought me to, I've met so many amazing people, and I get to be Rivers runner, which is really, really one of the biggest honors, I've ever been given. And I would have never thought that lacing up some sneakers and going for a run would have blessed me so big, but it has. And so you never know where those blessings are. And there's so many, so many times I'm pulled in directions and I'm like, okay, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do here, but I'm here for a reason. And it always turns out to be just a blessing always. So.
Yeah, and I like to picture, God sitting there right now listening to this conversation with just a big grin. You all got to see the magic I kind of weave together, and it is just all these connections and the blessings that come from and for him. It's amazing to me.
Gene and I prayed before I ran. We get down on our knees in the hotel, and I just ask, it's just so simple that, I know I'm running, and I know I'm just running, but, may this run be pleasing to you. And that's all I want. That's all I want. If I can finish with dignity, that would be a bonus. Just a little dignity. And my prayers are always answered. So I had faith and I had trust that it would be okay. I'm not going to say I wasn't worried, but I kept drawing on my faith, and it just turned out that I have just one of the most memorable best race experiences I've ever had.
It was fantastic. One of the things we talked about last time is you like to always have sort of these big things out in front of you. Have you given any thought to sort of what's next? I mean, surely you knew Boston was coming, and then that would be a big sort of afterwards, like, oh, now what do I do now? Have you given any thought to that?
Well, yeah, there are some races and some things that I'd like to do for River in some different parts of the country and maybe the world. And now that River's a little bit older, we'd like to write a book together, a child's book. So we want to do that. And as he's getting older, he has his own ideas for things. And so I just know that there's always going to be something in the works, a book, or we're going to go somewhere, or we'll have a new goal, I'm sure.
So anybody else dreaming of Boston, what would you say to them?
Well, I really think I'm a perfect example of if you want it and you train for it and you have a plan and you trust your training, you execute your plan. If you train, you can do it. I really am that person, because I really don't think I'm a naturally inclined runner. I've trained, and I had a training plan, and I stuck to the training plan, and just did everything I was supposed to do, and I qualified. And when you put it all together, it works. So it was a lot of hard work, but seriously, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I mean, really. And then once you're there, once you get there, you can just enjoy the experience. I had a goal, and that got changed a little bit, but that's okay. But I got to Boston. I I had my sights set on Boston, and I trained, and I trust my training, and I had some trust in God, and I had a little inspiration. Okay, a great big inspiration. My buddy River, and we went there, and we got the job done. So right now I'm just living the dream.
Yeah, what are you doing now? I mean, it looked like you all were going to spend a little extra time there. Is it just like walking around Boston on cloud nine? I imagine it's kind of like, the basketball team that comes home with the trophy. Are you kind of taking a victory lap through Boston?
I absolutely am. When I got here, I had my sights set on that celebration jacket. And so when we got here, I bought the jacket. My friends back at home chipped in for Christmas and put the exact amount the jacket cost in an envelope for Christmas. And so I bought the jacket, and in Boston, like I said, the whole town really celebrates. So anywhere I go, I wear my celebration jacket and my medal, and everybody just says, congratulations, congratulations. And the whole town is really involved in the marathon, whether you're a runner or not. And so that even though I don't live here, the town is just celebrating the race. There are posters and banners, and anywhere you go, people recognize you as a marathon, Boston Marathon runner, and are celebrating. So we're staying a few days. We're seeing the sights. We are doing all the tourist things, which is a lot of fun. The duck boat and the Freedom Trail we walked. I limped. Jean walked. I limped. And we're just, like I said, we're just seeing the sights. So we're having a lot of fun. We've kind of made a vacation out of it. And we'll be headed home tomorrow.
I was going to ask if Jean's going to be able to drag you home from there.
It's a little chilly here. So this Florida girl is I'm ready to go home, and I miss my friends. So.
Well, that is so cool. Well, I'm wondering then, because like I said, I listened to that last podcast, and you talked about New York, and you had a feeling Boston would be able to top New York. Did it top New York?
But yeah, Boston tops New York. New York was special, but Boston was just over the top, just over the top in every way. I'm so glad that they came in that order. That I got into. New York is a lottery, so I got into New York, and I ran Chicago before that, and Chicago was awesome too, but then New York topped Chicago, and then now this is just, I don't even know where you go from here. This is just the Mac Daddy of all the races, so I'm pretty much just hanging out right here for now.
Yeah, well, getting to know you like I have, I've got a funny feeling there'll be something popping up before too long that you'll have your sights set on that will probably find a way to top this if it's possible.
I'll have to look at your race calendar and see where you are so we can run together.
Oh, I would love to do that. I would love to do it.
Oh, that would be great. I'd love that.
We would have a good story. I know that. We would find a way to make a good story out of that. So we're going to plan that. We're not just going to wait.
I was just going to say, it's a done deal. We like to travel, and I'd love to run with you.
Well, let's figure out a way to make that happen, because it was truly special running with you through that computer screen. And I don't mind saying I'm glad that you had the weather and I had the computer screen. That's kind of the way that partnership worked best. But,
well, next time we're going to plan somewhere that has good weather, like all the time. So
we definitely have to do that. Well, I'm really proud of you, and I know a lot of people are. I imagine the guy I laughed because in the last podcast I kind of chuckled and laughed at Gene sitting at the dinner table hearing these ideas you come with. So somewhere in the back of his mind, he's got to be wondering, oh, Lord, what is she going to do next?
Exactly. He's thinking that. He's already said, we're going to sleep a little, right? We're going to rest for a little while, right? Right? And I'm like, yeah, for a little bit. Okay, we're going to rest for a little bit. And then, I'm gearing up. I'm doing push-ups over here, figuring out what's next.
What next?
Box do we check next?
In all seriousness, I've got a lot of admiration for Gene because you're always very open about honoring his support and letting folks know what a big part of that is. So I joke about that, but in all seriousness, I know he was absolutely on board with you. His support is really a good model for all of us in terms of supporting one another and being there. So you're a great team. You're an awesome team.
Thank you. We think we're an awesome team. He's the best. He's just the best. So I appreciate him, and I tell him every single day how much, because I am very fortunate. He takes very good care of me. So, and Keith, I want to thank you so much for sharing our story. I just love talking to you, and I love what you do, and you are a blessing.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. So I think we come from the same place. We both know the ultimate story we want to get out there. And when God's working in the ways he did with you this week and through you and River and just the unlikely start and where it is, that's the kind of story I want to share, because there's only one way to explain that kind of story to me. And that's what God's doing. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am going to get to work figuring out where you and I are going to run together, and then
okay, it's a date.
That will be our next podcast interview when we run together.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be fun. I can't wait. This is going to be great. Okay, awesome. Well, I will be in touch then.
Okay. God bless you. Thank you so much
God bless
for doing
you
this.
too. Thank you so much.
Safe travels home, and I'm kind of excited for you to get back to the Florida warmth. You deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless you, Keith.
Have a great night. See you, Jodi.
Okay.
Well, there, I know you don't have any trouble then seeing why I just love talking with Jodi Stoner, just full of life, passion, and what a great recounting of her adventure this past Monday at the Boston Marathon. I just love that she said, this is not what I signed up for. And I can imagine standing there thinking exactly that. You trained for a year or more getting ready for this thing. You picture this race of a lifetime, really, and you kind of imagine how it's going to play out, and then you get to that starting line, and it's not playing out anything like you expected. But in true Jodi style, she found a way to mentally kind of reframe what was going to happen that day and drew on her faith. And it sounds like a lot of that Boston atmosphere. It sounds like the fans, too, got out there and really kind of adjusted what they were going to do and cheered louder, right? They got out there and the weather was nasty and found a way to be better at cheering than even on a normal day. So it was a great conversation. And I know River was really proud of Jodi. It's that relationship between the two of them. If you don't follow Jodi on Facebook, you should. She's always running for River, always throwing inspiration his way. And in doing so, throws inspiration our way. I just love every day. She's full of life. It's a great way to start the day, reading some of her stuff, seeing that big smile, feeling her energy. And just like it was in this interview, that's who she is. That's how she does life, and it's in a big way. And now it looks like I'm gonna get to run with her. We will definitely have to figure that out, Jodi, because now that it's in my head, we got to get that done. So anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you all have a great week. Get out there and run if running's your thing. And if not, get out there and cheer somebody like Jodi on. Lean over that fence and say, you can do it. You can do it. Go, go, go. And if running is not your thing at all, then I'm just glad that you showed up here and listened to this particular episode, because I think it does go way beyond running. It gets into just these personal relationships we can have with one another, supporting one another. Reach out and make a friend like River, make a life a little bit better. And I know Jodi does that. So it's a good place for you to come hang out right here. If you want to read any more of the stories, listen to any more of the podcast, you can go to my website, 2tim47.com, TWOTIM47.com, and then come back next time for the next episode. You all have a great week.
I won't quit here, despite